Hey there, guys. Couldn't resist the take two here, or part two, at the Virginia Memorial. Let me begin by saying Jubal Early. Sorry, Jubal Early was the Confederate commander at Monocacy. Just came back to me. But where did I want to leave off? There's not that much more for me to say. I mean, there is, but there's, things floating around in my head. And again, guys, I don't have a script. I don't, rehearse these things. I don't have a little, anything I'm looking at. So, let me see. I was thinking a couple of my favorite quotes by Robert E. Lee. I mean, there are a whole lot of favorite quotes that people probably have from this guy. Not that he was, known for his quips, or that he really always tried to come out with zingers. Maybe the way that Lincoln did, or that some others did. I mean, these were all smart, bright guys. Don't get me wrong. All of them, North, South, or a lot of the better commanders. Anyhow, don't forget, most of them were educated. Most of them went to military academies. Most of them, weren't rough and tumble guys that just rose up the ranks. With few exceptions. Let me see. There was the Battle of Fredericksburg, again, in some of his finest hours down in Virginia. After the war, Union got slaughtered in Fredericksburg. That was one of their worst losses. I can't remember exactly how many they lost, but it was double. It was more. It was, I think, slightly more than double what the Confederates lost there. Could have been 10,000. I think that's in the ballpark. Again, I'm not the battlefield expert. I'm not a licensed guide. But after the so the Union, Burnside, for some reason that probably myself and many other people still can't figure it out, sent a lot of corps across an open field to charge Jackson. Up on type of one of the most imposing and commanding locations in a lot of these battles. One of the craziest charges that anybody could ever possibly order, and thus, Burnside didn't last long, for this and other reasons. But that was the main reason why he did quit. He didn't even wait to get fired. I'm not sure if he would have or not, but he resigned after that. And he sent lots and lots and lots of Union troops up the slope across the field and towards the slope called Marye's Hill, where they just got mowed down and mowed down and mowed down some more. And let me see, I'm talking about Fredericksburg, and the quote is, Lee, after seeing the carnage, I mean, it was brutal. There's some great accounts of it, great descriptions by soldiers who were there, and I invite anybody who's interested in the Civil War to go back and look over those battles and look for some of these quotes of descriptions of men. There's a really good one from a video I've been watching. It's a really long video. I can't even remember who made the video. But in that video, which I'll try to link, it's probably getting windy and noisy. I'll try to leave the description, and so you can glean some of that, and I'll try to leave a time mark so you can go over those descriptions. But Lee eventually, of course, also surveys the scene afterwards and sees all the carnage, and there's just, there's just twisted bodies everywhere. And that quote, as many people know, is that it is well that war is so terrible that we may begin to like it. I'm butchering that. But what he was saying was, I think that quote might be misinterpreted by some, that to mean almost the opposite thing. And Lee was really shocked at what he saw, because it was just that gruesome. And of course, another one of my favorite quotes is, some of you probably know I'm going to say, was after the Battle of Chancellorsville, when unfortunately he lost one of his best generals, when Stonewall Jackson was actually killed. Eventually he didn't die on the spot, but Stonewall Jackson was shot by some of his own men who mistook him. He went out, actually, this was the crazy part, and this was his mistake. Stonewall Jackson actually went out on an expedition to get, not behind enemy lines, but to peer in through the woods in the middle of the night to try to assess situation and what the Union was doing and where they were. And upon returning from that little foray, there was a small band of his own soldiers, one of which who shot him, shot him up pretty good, and he died a bit later. I think it was it might have been the next day, or it might have been like about 2 or maybe 3 days later. Again, I'm not the expert, but Jackson has a great quote here too. Jackson, after laying on his bed for quite some time, oh, by the way, I'm sorry. So it was at least a couple days later. I wish I could tell you exactly, but I'm not going to cheat and look at my phone. But it was sometime later, because it wasn't actually the wound. It could have been 2 weeks later. It wasn't actually the wound that killed Jackson. The wound was stitched up pretty well, and by his surgeon's accounts, he was recovering pretty well from the wound. What killed him was pneumonia, and so he gets real bad into pneumonia. It starts to just, tear him up inside, and pretty soon the doctor knows he's going to die, and his prognosis was very accurate. He was like, you don't have much time at all, bub. And Jackson goes through these fits and bouts, and at one point he kind of does one of these, and he looks up at the ceiling and he starts shouting orders to his men in the troops. And he's laying in bed, but he's shouting orders like, left flank, da-da-da-da-da, and right flank, go attack this and this. And then he kind of snaps out of it again, and then he just starts staring up at the ceiling again. And I think a doctor comes back and tells him, hey, look, at this point, bro, it's going to be pretty soon. It's going to be like 12 hours or less. And he just starts staring off into space, and he says very calmly, okay then, it's okay then. Let us cross the river and rest under the shade of a tree. That one still gives me lumps. Obviously. And so after that happened, after he finally succumbed to pneumonia, Lee's famous quote here is that Jackson may have lost his left arm, but I've lost my right. Boom. That's just a mic drop moment right there. So those are some other, some of my favorite anecdotes from the boys from Virginia. I don't know if there's really, what else can I say about Lee? Again, there's, you don't really have to be partisan here, and I hope nobody is really a partisan. I mean, I know most people kind of are going to tend to favor the North or the South, depending on where you're from, and depending on where you grew up, and depending on where your mommy and daddy came from. But that's not the proper way to look at history, is it? I guess one point that I just want to drive home in these last couple minutes is, again, there were a lot more similarities between Northern and Southern commanders, at least on the upper levels, than people like to, than they know or would care to admit if they did know. And again, I urge folks to try to look at this thing as objectively as you can. Try to push yourself all the time, whenever you open a book, or watch a documentary, or watch something on YouTube, to not be swayed by anybody who's trying to sway you to the right, to the left, to the north, to the south, because that's just not the appropriate way to approach history. I shouldn't have to say that out loud, but I probably do. Again, that many people, many Americans, North and South, whether they were slave owners or not, saw the whole matter of race in a very similar light. Basically, people in the North and the South were all very racist, for the most part, outside of some parts of New York and outside of the state of Massachusetts. Pretty much everybody else was very racist, and that's something that folks need to get through their thick heads. Especially if I incredibly doubt that anybody who really follows me, and it's a small following, anybody who's following me, and especially the Civil War stuff, happens to be black or an African American, rather incorrectly, but anyways. But if you are, please try to see through that stuff. I'm not trying to attack anybody, but you have to leave your hang-ups aside when you're looking at history. Here comes the wind, and I've probably already said too much and once again pissed too many people off. But this is real talk, this is real stuff, this is real history. Again, I'm not the utmost expert, but I do look at things as objectively as I humanly can. Even when I feel like maybe I'm getting a little too biased or something, I try to stop and check myself and ask myself to put myself in the other's shoes, to see things a different way than the official stories in the textbooks. and to really understand this nasty, complex subject in its entirety, the way that it should be seen, from afar, from a distance, detached. It's, you know, not the way you should handle your personal relationships, but it's how you should handle history. That's my take on it. I'm sure some people probably don't agree, but I very strongly feel that way about how to properly look at things when we're looking at the past and trying to deconstruct events and make sense of things. Anyway, guys, that's well, I'm at my limit again. I will see you soon.